There's so many comments today. I want to pick up on some of them. James Goff says praying equals intimidation. Do you hear yourself? Well, yeah, it's an interesting issue, this idea of prayer as intimidation, because there's quite a lot of evidence that prayer has been used over the centuries as a form of intimidation. So, for example, during the Spanish Inquisition, forced prayers, and religious recitations were used as tests of orthodoxy, and refusal to participate often led to denunciations of heresy, and indeed death sentences. The witch trials in early modern uh, Europe, and in America, Salem witch trials and so on, witches were sometimes forced to pray to prove their innocence. The Ku Klux Klan and Christian prayer gatherings. Uh, Prayer can be quite an intimidating experience. During one towards the end of my time at university as an undergraduate, I remember I was in a shared house, and there was a spare room which was suddenly inhabited by this quite elderly lady who was fascinating. She'd been a friend of Quentin Crisp, and she'd published her own autobiography. I've still got a copy, and she came back to the house one day looking a little somber, and I asked her if she wanted a cup of tea, and we had a cup of tea together. And she said, I've just been out to the doctor, and he's told me I'm dying. I haven't done that before. I'm quite looking forward to it. It'll be a new experience. And he then said, some people told me that they were going to pray for me. I was quite intimidated. And um, she said, it gave me the willies. And I must say, I'm inclined to sympathise with her point of view. Um, and I think prayer is something that you can invite, but it can be quite an unpleasant imposition if it's thrown at you, rather like somebody who assaults you and says, "I want to be your friend," uh, and you want to run a mile. In the Adhan, the call to prayer, the Islamic call to prayer, was amplified in some contested areas in India, and during times of inter-religious tension, in a way that opponents might have perceived as an assertion of dominance rather than a neutral religious practice. Christian street preachers and in LGBTQ plus places, where people are publicly praying for the salvation of patrons, effectively using prayer as a passive aggressive or intimidating act. There have been cases where there have been mandatory prayers in workplaces. The football coach case, I think there was one in there was a case in America in 2022. There was a the whole issue of public and private prayer, banning school prayers and so on, and people who don't wish to participate in Christian prayers, people who feel ostracized, bullied, subjected to discrimination. Prayer prayer is in many senses a private issue. It's also a community issue. And if you're not part of that community, you can feel quite easily intimidated. So I understand how prayer can be weaponized, um, and I think at the same time it can also be a wonderful creative thing. And so many of the great acts of art, the great works of music, and the great paintings, uh, great works of theatre, are predicated on prayer and on religious understanding, going all the way back to ancient Greece and the Greek tragedies of the wonderful Bacchae, modern Greek pronunciation is Vachi, but the Bacchae, this examination of the rise of a cult that was considered scary, and that was demonstrably scary. People were right to be scared by this. Prayer is not a vacuous, and it doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists as part of a society, and if you're not part of that society, it is oppressive. Full stop.